My brain does not work well past like 9 o'clock. I try, but I'm not a person.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Yeah, me too. I'm reading my book.
Okay,
Oh,
I'd
God.
like to call to order the January 19th, 2023 meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission. This meeting is going to be held in a hybrid fashion. Public may participate in person at the Don B. Griffin Room at Harwich Town Hall. You can watch on Harwich Channel 18 or join the GoToMeeting online meeting. Instructions for joining online are on the agenda, which can be found posted on the Conservation Commission webpage on the town website. I'd like to start the meeting by welcoming our new member, Associate Conservation Commissioner Sophia Pilling.
Thank you.
Welcome. So, moving along to the agenda, we're going to start with RDAs, starting with 47 Strandway, map 1, parcel J156, installation of a rinse station. Who do we have representing?
Good thing it's easy.
Good timing.
Barely. I'm going to pretend I can see everything. This project is fairly simple. We were before you a little while ago for an administrative review, and that was simply to get confirmation that the existing construction was to date, or up to date, and approved by the commission. And on that plan, you saw, oh, I ran up the stairs. You saw the removal of the little back deck entry, which I believe is 64 square feet. I'm gonna put my glasses on real quick. And I was told that I could bank that, or the applicant could bank that removal for square footage. And what this project simply is a rinse station, just an open shower enclosure with less square feet. Let me see. So there's
24.
actually a net loss of cover on the property. And Dan was sure to design a drainage of just stone underneath the shower, so there won't be any issue with erosion or sedimentation. And that's the project. It's going within existing lawn area, outside the 50-foot buffer, just behind the garage.
Okay. Thank you. Amy?
So Lynn came in front of us for this property back in November for the other work that she was speaking towards. At that time, they had wanted to remove a deck off the back of the house. It's about 62 square feet. Because they were planning on applying for other things in the near future, I made the comment that, you know, if it's close in proximity time-wise, I didn't see a reason why we couldn't count the reduction of the deck towards if you wanted to do something a little bit such as this rinse station. And the rinse station is 24 square feet in size. The deck was closer to the top of the bank there, and which was much larger. So there's no mitigation proposed. In my mind, there's none required. You've already put the condition about no fertilizers and chemical usage on this property in the last hearing. The drainage, the stone that you're providing is adequate for drainage, and I would recommend approval with a -3 determination that the work's gonna take place in the buffer zone, but will not have a negative impact to the coastal bank.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the commissioners, starting with Mark.
No remarks, thank you.
No comment.
None here, thank you.
No comment.
Jim, Sophia, any questions or comments? I have no questions or comments. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I will move that we approve the request for a determination of applicability for 47 Strandway, map 1, parcel J1-56, with a -3 determination.
All right, thank you very much. Oops, sorry.
Was
We
that
need
a
to vote
second?
first.
Slow down.
Few more steps.
I'm still running apparently.
You don't get the second motion.
Mark seconded. I did.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Looks like
Thank you.
6 in favor. Okay. Next on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability for 14 Atlantic Street, map 6B, parcel L 140, for reconstructing a home on existing foundation, upgrading the septic system, and reconfiguring the porch.
Good evening, my name's Jack Wishart, I'm with Coastline Construction, and that is correct, sir. I'm here to see what questions I can answer on our plan to demo the existing structure and rebuild on the existing foundation that is there, plus a small addition on the back northwest corner.
Any further description you care to give us about what you're doing? Otherwise, we can move on to Amy if you have anything more to say.
I really don't. I think you've had a chance to review the plans and see, where the location falls for a portion of the work. But just happy to answer any questions that you might have, comments, et cetera.
Okay? Amy?
Yep. So, this property, the front half of it on the roadside, the Atlantic Street side, is within the 100-foot buffer to the top of the coastal bank, even though it is across the street from the coastal bank. This is in the campgrounds area of town where the lots are really, really small. So that addition you were speaking of in the northwest corner is actually not within our jurisdiction. So what they're proposing is to rebuild in the same footprint that they have. It is actually in a X flood zone, not a regulatory flood zone. The one, and that's why it's here for you as an RDA, so we can condition things such as debris containment, which we typically do, and storage of materials, especially on a tight site like this site. But, I mean, I'm recommending approval with a -3, just like the last one. One thing I did mention to Jack, and it's more of a discussion that he'll need to have with the highway department / the zoning board of appeals, is the fact that the porch, which is on a concrete foundation, does go into the road layout of Atlantic. It is not, so that's not a conservation purview thing. It's existing, it's not, that's not going, proposed to change. But I did, I wanted to bring it to your attention ahead of the meeting in case there were questions about that, and also, going forward with your other boards that you have to go to. So, nothing that conservation can regulate. We don't regulate proximity to property lines of roads and things like that. So I would recommend approval with a -3 determination.
Okay, thank you. Comments from commissioners? Mark?
I have no remarks.
No
Jim?
comment.
Alan?
No comments.
Sophia? I have no comments.
There might be on the online, I'm
We
not
have-
sure.
Do you have any comments from the public or somebody online?
If you're on the phone, can you please mute yourself?
Okay. Doesn't seem like we have any other comments, so can we have a motion on this?
Sure. I will move that we approve the request for a determination of applicability for 14 Atlantic Street, map 6B, parcel L140, with a -3 determination.
I second it.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. None opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
It's out to you in a few days.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your rainy evening.
You too.
It's nice out there.
Well, at least we didn't have it during our site.
It's not
visit.
snow.
And it's not snow, right. So, next on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability from the town of Harwich, 0 North Road, map 28, parcel C4, for a permit to stabilize path leading to the pedestrian bridge and install fencing following an emergency certification.
That's me.
That's you,
Can
okay.
I stay here or do you want me to go present?
I'm fine with you staying where you are.
I won't,
No one will object.
okay. Well, the Conservation Commission issued an emergency certification last year to stabilize this area on the north side of the pedestrian bridge in the Bell's Neck Conservation Area. Essentially, people were being able to drive almost all the way to that footbridge just to look out. And it was being used excessively, the side slopes, for launching of kayaks and crabbing, to the point where the access to actually, the safe access to get onto the footbridge was only about 2 feet wide, and was very unsafe. So under the State Wetlands Protection Act, you are allowed to issue what's called an emergency certification for the public health and safety, and we determined that it was a health and safety risk to the public in this public conservation area. So what we did was brought in some fill, brought in just a little bit of stone to kind of stabilize the edge of where there already was stone, and then filter fabric stone, and then on top of that, erected some sturdy post and rail fence to keep cars from driving out to the extent that they were, and to help keep people off that precarious slope down into the marsh. And it's working a lot better than having nothing. That we're still getting some people walking down that slope, but it's not as much. And it's probably a shorter term solution. We have some longer term ideas that I'll be sharing with you shortly for that area, but that's pretty much it. It's just the after the fact filing from emergency certification.
Okay, thank you. Start with you, Mark.
Question, the lumber that's in that fence, is that comparable in product to what anybody else would use in that circumstance?
I don't know. We used to use traditional split rail fencing, but we found it to be pretty flimsy. You can hit it with a car, it'll fall down or snap. This is a little heavier duty, so I don't really know the answer to that. We've been using that fence all around town.
Well, my point is, I mean, obviously it's a decent fence and it's pretty strong, but my concern is that it is of the same material that would be required of anybody else that was going to do something of that nature. So just going forward, maybe it's food for thought. It's there now, it looks good, it's sound. But I would hate to see someone make an example
Yeah.
of that material and not be permitted to use that same material in a similar circumstance.
So the circumstance we used it in was for a public safety circumstance. I think it might be a little different if a private property owner, it's case by case basis, but if a private property owner wanted to use this fence for something other than that.
Okay, Stan? Brad?
It looks good, and I'll just ask Mark what his concerns would be with that type of fence. Do you have a specific concern?
Only that, I've seen other cases where people weren't permitted to use pressure-treated material.
I don't think on this commission you have, PT lumber's been allowed non-CCA PT lumber since really mid-1990s. It's been permitted for this type of use for a very long time.
Okay.
It's the old style chromium
CCA.
CCA stuff, which has been frowned upon for a very long
Yeah.
time. But stock PT is okay.
There might have been an instance or two where we've required, or the applicant has asked for pilings for a dock or something like that, something in the water. Sometimes the applicant will say they're gonna do green heart, which is non-treated, or sometimes they'll say non-CCA. But I don't know if we've ever said which.
Just as a follow-up, can you buy CCA today if you want it?
I don't know.
Yes, marine applications can for certain marine timbers. I think the average person can't go to Home Depot and buy it. It's just not permittable. But I think for some marine applications, it is.
Yeah.
It's still available.
Jim?
No questions.
Alan?
Nothing.
Sophia? I just have one question, which is, it was clear that already the repairs that were made in a few places are beginning to degrade because of probably improper use. Do you have a plan to do anything about that in the near term, or?
I was gonna have DPW, go in and patch that area where the stone was starting to slump because somebody has been walking down that slope there. And probably putting up a sign saying, please keep off, and a reason why, for the protection of the salt marsh. So yes, that's on the agenda for tomorrow to send out a work order for the DPW
Okay,
to repair it.
thank you. Anything else? Any other comments from the public? Okay, can we have a motion then?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the after the fact application for a determination of applicability for the town of Harwich as 0 North Road, map 28, parcel C4, with a -2 and -3 determination.
Second?
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is a notice of intent for 61 Shore Road, map 2, parcel B1-1, to raise and replace a dwelling for the appurtenances and beach access.
Good evening, Dan Proto from Moran Engineering. Here for James and Tracy Fish and their proposal to remove the existing house at 61 Shore Road and construct a new house. We had come before you the last hearing, beginning of January, and there were landscaping changes that the commission was requesting, and Angela Taylor from Crawford Land Management, Genic Studio, revised her plan to reflect what I believe the big concerns of the commission were, at putting the mitigation down closest to the wetland resource, removing the lawn, the required mitigation, that the 340 square feet required. And then the owners had always, they had, right from the beginning, before even I was involved, had the landscaping plan in the works and always planned on doing the work, but because it wasn't specifically required because of the, when we looked at the mitigation, it wasn't, we originally had it as optional on the plan. So to meet the commissioners, some of the commissioners' request and concerns, then that optional got removed. The owners had no issue with that. So that invasive species in front between the living area, the house, and the revetment, that all will be part of the project to remove the non-natives and plant the natives. I believe Angela is here for landscaping questions, or is on the computer for landscaping questions. I'll leave it at that, because from what I remember, that was the big issue. Big issues with landscaping, but obviously any questions are ready for.
Thank you. Amy?
They revised plans based on a lot of the comments from the commissioners and myself, mainly that mitigating for the increase in hard structure in the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone of 170 square feet by 340 square feet by removing lawn, brick, and timber, and redistributing where they were going to do that, instead of doing it, some of that on the property line between 65 Shore and this one, reducing more lawn area towards the edge of the dune, and replanting more of that lawn area with natives. So, this meets our mitigation requirement. This, the resource area here is a coastal dune. As we talked about last time, that was revetted a while ago, probably never should have been revetted, because you're not supposed to revet a coastal dune, but it was permitted by the commission back 20 or 30 years ago. So it is a dune by structure. It has the dune sediment, but it is not a dune that is allowed to freely migrate. So it in effect is almost like a coastal bank in terms of performance standards. So what they're proposing to do will not have an adverse effect on storm damage prevention and flood control. It is going to be a little bit better than what is currently out there, particularly if you condition the no chemical usage. And while we cannot necessarily, in my professional opinion, require them to do the additional restoration work of the 3,700 square feet, it's good to hear that they want to do it, and we can, of course, highly encourage it, in my opinion. I would recommend approval of the project.
Okay. Comments from commissioners. Let's start with Alan.
I have no comments.
Jim?
No comment.
Brad?
Just in general, I want to, I guess, make the comment again that I think these projects are just great opportunities to, when you're raising a structure, to pull back from the resource area and try to reduce impacts to the resource area. So I'm a little disappointed that we're not doing more here, but I do want to still applaud the project. You guys did a lot to meet our concerns. You've met the regulations, you've met our bylaws. So I think it's certainly a supportable project.
Okay. Mark?
No remarks.
I just have one remark that's sort of a general remark, which is, Amy, you said if we condition no chemicals. I believe our regulations say that any fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, or anything of the sort are prohibited within a 100-foot buffer. So they're already prohibited. We should mention it, but it's not conditional on anything. That prohibition is not conditional on anything we do here. I hope you agree with me, right? I was.
We've always put it as a condition. I don't remember
Well, it should be as a condition, but
if it was on
it's
our
still
last.
prohibited, even if we somehow neglect to put it in as a condition.
I think it was a bylaw change.
Wouldn't have been a bylaw change, it would have been a
Well,
reg change.
I was reading the regulations recently, and it was
Then
they're
yes.
like in black and white.
Okay.
So
We've had so many renditions,
we've
so
been
I
around in
always,
circles on that. but
Yep.
When I read that again, I thought, right,
okay,
remind everyone, that is a prohibition.
mm-hmm,
And the prohibition does not depend on us including it in the order of conditions, even though I agree, it should be there anyway.
right,
That's my only comment.
okay.
Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just, and this is maybe just a general question, but beyond the 50-foot setback, so between the 50 and the 100, the planting plans stop? Is that up for, like, is that, they don't have to be native, they can be, you know, whatever the landscape architect chooses?
Good question. What is the plan for the areas that are not planted kind of along the property lines?
It says planting.
There's an area that's currently grass, right, that Angela has just written as plantings. She is on the computer, so hopefully she hears us. Now she sees us. Angela?
Angela?
She's got her.
Hi, this is Angela Tanner from Genic Studio Crawford Land Management. We did not do a planting plan yet for the areas that are not mitigation or restoration areas. That is something that we will be working with the client on, assuming that this gets permitted. We're happy to work with you on running by the plant palette with you if you like. I personally use mostly natives in most of my projects. Obviously, we have not figured out a final planting palette. A lot of times clients want some of the more culturally popular plantings as well, sometimes around the foundation. So we had hoped to resolve that at a later date.
So what we would typically do is they put on here what they're planning on working on. Anything excess, we don't always see. We do, it obviously cannot be invasive. We encourage as much as we can, natives in our area.
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
I understood your question, Sophia, to be, what about what's outside the 100-foot buffer?
50-foot. It seemed, it just like it, you know, but behind the 100-foot seems sort of like up for interpretation, but between the 50 and 100, like in my experience, has been more of a sensitive area. So I was just curious, is that like the next step, or, you know, do we just take this piece and look at that? So.
Well, that's a flaw here, I think. That is, you're planning to do work inside the 100-foot buffer, and you haven't specified to us what that work is. That's what I just heard Angela say, and
There's a, yeah, right now it's existing lawn, it's turning into plantings. I guess, hearing from Angela, it looks like it was chiefly gonna be natives. I don't know if the commission requires all natives for that area. I mean, it's conversion of lawn to plants, I guess.
so I would suggest that
We're happy to, if you want to add a condition that you need to approve the final plant list for those. We were considering those foundation plantings, ornamental plantings, meaning they're not the same exact planting palette as is in the restoration area. But we certainly were planning on using native plantings within the the 50 to 100. And if you want to approve the exact plant list, we're happy to submit that. We didn't have one. We didn't realize that was, the ornamental plantings were going to be part of the review. So that's my fault.
just a further comment, ornamental plantings typically require fertilization and other things that we're discouraging. I would suggest that the answer here is that we condition this on the conservation agent, Amy, approving any final planting plan within the 100-foot buffer. I don't think you need to come back here for that.
That sounds good to us, that,
Okay.
get that approval.
Yeah, and ornamental plantings, when I say that, what I mean is not hydrangeas and daylilies. What I mean is that it's not a mitigation area and it's not a restoration area. It's just a native planting area. So if we want to write that into the order of conditions, I think that would be great.
So it sounds like we're fine with native plants, and we're fine with Amy's approval of any plantings that are within that 50 to 100. Except the 0 to 50 is completely spelled out. The 50 to 100 areas had not been completely spelled out, just except where the lawn was going to stay for the lawn path and then the plantings. And Angela can certainly submit anything to Amy.
So,
There are a few beds in, around the patio area that they do fall within the 0 to 50 as well.
okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Would someone care to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the notice of intent for 61 Shore Road, map 2, parcel B1-1, with the condition that the conservation agent approve the planting plan for all planting being done within the 100-foot buffer.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
All right, thank you.
Next, we have Pleasant Bay Community Boating, 2285 and 2287, Route 28, Head of the Bay Road, map 119, parcels 7-3 and N8-0. Changes to parking areas, retaining walls, walkways, stairs, and deck.
Good evening. My name is John O'Reilly, and I'm been working with the Pleasant Bay Group for a number of years since they purchased the four properties along Route 28. So what we're trying to do here is three things. We want to address some code deficiencies as far as the handicapped accessibility between the two properties, the one in Brewster and the one in Harwich. There is some proposed, some minor landscaping to the building on 2287, which includes some retaining walls and some ADA walkway on the south side of 2287. And then we have a safety issue with regards to 2285, Head of the Bay Road, in that the organization, Community Boating, uses the dwelling at 2285 as some summer rental income, and the existing deck and stairway and driveway are becoming a little bit unmanageable from a safety point of view. So I'm going to start with the resources we're dealing with. Certainly, we're dealing with the ACEC for Pleasant Bay, land under water body being Pleasant Bay, a coastal bank that runs along the whole shoreline adjacent to Pleasant Bay. And then we have some inland resources to the west of Route 28, an old cranberry bog, a cranberry bog and an old vegetated wetland. So we've reflected those buffer zones on this property. This part of the property, you can't do anything without involving one commission of a town or another, whether it be Brewster or you folks. So with regards to 2285, we are simply removing and reconstructing a gravel driveway that services one vehicle for the dwelling. We are reconstructing and repositioning a retaining wall to allow for a more stable landing area for the car, as well as some breathing room and some daylight between the current wall and the north end of the home. And then we have a set of stairs and a concrete pad and an at-grade deck. We're looking to remove all of those structures and then replace it with an at-grade deck, same elevation, no change in elevation. We are reconfiguring it a little bit in order to match the existing deck area with a small connection to the stairway that transitions up to the parking area. Another aspect on 2285 is there are some significant trees that are up against the house on the water side. The Pleasant Bay Group is concerned from a safety point of view. These are not small trees, they are significant trees. And so we're looking to remove all of the trees that are up against the building to the east of the building, and 2 trees to the north of the driveway. We are replanting native shrubs and trees. We've given you a mixture of 1 black oak, several cedars, and then not wanting to recreate the situation we're trying to mitigate now, we're proposing to put in shrubs, and we've proposed shadbush and bayberry, so there is some size there. And I did give you folks a supplemental package that has a planting sketch on it, so it gives you an idea of where these plants are going to be going. So moving to 2287, we are proposing to provide an ADA ramp and walkway from the paved access drive to an existing patio area that is shaded in gray. We're also trying to mitigate some erosion and some runoff. Currently, a significant amount of rain runs down the paved access drive and floods the lower driveway and causes some washout. So what we're proposing to do is construct a small berm that will direct the water into a splash pad, which will dissipate the runoff into a wooded area to the west of 2287. On the north of, west of 2285. On the north side of 2287, we are proposing 2 retaining walls, and we are proposing a formal ADA parking area with 2 access ramps. A portion of the 2 walkways and a portion of the maneuverability of the ADA area is within Town of Harwich, and we're seeking permission for your approval to do the ADA work. The majority of the structure, though, is within Brewster, and we have filed for notice of intent and order of conditions, and we're being heard from them next Tuesday. The ADA component is when the group purchased this home back, purchased these properties back in 2015, 2016, we sought and obtained an approval for an ADA area between these 2 buildings. It was smaller than what we're currently showing, and we were not providing any paved walkways where this proposal has paved walkways. The group, the Pleasant Bay Group, tried to the walkways and the ramps gravel and processed stone, and it's just not working out for them. Some people have had trouble with access, so we are addressing that with a paved surface for 2 cars and van accessibility, and then 2 paved walkways or ramps. 1 ramp will go to the top of the knoll, if you will, to the east of 2287, and then the second ramp will come to an entrance door on the north side of 2287. We are addressing storm runoff with a stone trench, and again, that's in Brewster. So the drain's not in Harwich. And with regards to mitigation, I know this commission is pretty straightforward with their mitigation quantities and what they're expecting. I did provide staff a supplemental letter which outlined clearly what the hardscape was for when we came to you folks 2014 to 2016. And then I have a comparison of what we're proposing today, which results in a net increase of just over 500 square feet of hardscape. I am not proposing any mitigation for that additional space, and the reason for that is I'm asking the commission to consider the mitigation package that was approved by this and Brewster's commission, which resulted in a reduction of about 4,800 square feet of hardscape and paving, which does provide the additional hardscape, additional mitigation that the 500 square feet requires. So I just wanted to get that out on the table. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point. I know we do have Huntley Harrison, who's my main contact at Pleasant Bay. He'd be happy to answer any questions that I can't answer. Oh, I'm sorry, the last component is, and I'm sorry, it doesn't even involve you. It's the walkway between the parking lot and the shorefront area down in Orleans. We are providing a more formal walkway. But again, that's really, well, there's just a small beginning of it in Harwich. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I'm sorry for confusion. This project always drives me a little crazy because everything we do involves at least 2 towns and 2 boards and 2 sets of meetings. And so again, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission has.
Thank you.
Thank you. My first question, I sent an email, was in regards to the statement of a decrease of 100 square feet of hardscape in the 50-foot buffer, and I see that that is from the 2014 to 2016 approval. Because if you look at, comparatively, if you look at what your existing conditions are now, in your existing conditions plan proposed to your, compared to your proposed conditions plan, it does appear that you are adding in the 0 to 50-foot buffer. I do appreciate what Pleasant Bay Community Boating did 2014 and between 2014 and 2016, but something that was done that long ago and approved that long ago, I cannot recommend you kind of that you get credit for something that was such a long time ago. If you're doing a project, you know, within a year or something, I can see that, but it just gets it's too convoluted. The regulations was different back then too, maybe, and I can't compare it. I'm not prepared to compare them at this time. But, and I understand that the majority of what you're wanting to do here is to improve it for runoff and erosion and stormwater, as well as make it more ADA compatible. And I think the commission could potentially be able to grant variances, but I would say not without mitigation for it. My suggestion would be to look closer to the top of your coastal bank, maybe reducing a little bit of the existing wood chip area. I understand that you use that for access. It is very wide. There was a question on site, are people driving on that now? Because it kind of leads up from that paved area, and maybe that's something Huntley in a minute can comment on, but it's not meant to be a driveway if it is. So essentially what I would recommend is that you do have to mitigate for the 513 square feet of additional hardscape. And if there's an increase in the 0 to 50. As far as building 2285, which is the cottage that you rent out, what you're proposing to do there makes absolute sense. The trees are extremely close. They're practically on top of that that dwelling. You're replacing them with smaller, more understory trees and shrubs, and I think from a safety standpoint that would be allowable under the variance. Your deck and staircase area is approximately in the same area that it is now. It does look like that gravel parking area is set to increase from 260 square feet to 270, and that's really close right to the top of the coastal bank there. So, I guess, so my question for Huntley is that wood chipped area, Huntley, that's seaward of existing building 2287, is that used for vehicular traffic at all?
Are you talking about the path that comes up from the main park? I don't have a map in front of me, I'm sorry. Was that the path that comes up from the main parking area you're referring to and then goes into that small parking area on the north side of the house?
No, Huntley, Amy's asking about the wood chipped area to the east of your office.
Oh, to the east there?
Yeah,
Is that used for vehicles?
that was her question.
Not on a regular basis. If we need to get things out of the main building, which is 2070 in Brewster, now and then we'll bring a pickup truck up to load it and then drive it back down. But that's all. It's not commonly used for vehicles.
Also, John, we noticed that the viewing platform that's south of the staircase, it is on Town of Harwich property, or Town of Harwich, and it's not on the plan.
Oh.
So,
Sorry,
there's a viewing platform that's south of the access stairs that are in Brewster, or actually, no, those are in Harwich too. But there's, heading south from those stairs, there's probably a 10 by 10 viewing platform there that doesn't show up on the plan.
oh, okay, well, I'll have to pick that up. I missed that.
I know that it's not, I mean, it's like an existing conditions, actually, I don't know, but it's just something that should be on the plans. And I didn't tell you because we didn't notice it till today. That's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you. Comments from commissioners? Mark?
No remarks, thank you.
Stan?
I don't know if we got a question about that pathway, that dirt roadway or pathway, is that being used or not?
Which,
If you were facing the building, you had the tarred driveway up, and off to the right, you have the looked like a dirt driveway at one time.
He's talking about the driveway by 2285. That goes down to where, where the boats are stored.
right, it's not used with any regularity. I'm sure that there's a car parked there for people using the house during the summertime, but it's not used with any type of regularity.
I don't have any other questions.
The only time that pathway is used is for loading and unloading of vehicles, and then they're not allowed to park there.
Okay. Thank you.
And we keep that open for fire regulations, so that if there were an emergency or an ambulance or a fire truck needed to come up, that roadway would be open and they'd have access
Thank goodness.
going down the hill and around and back out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brad?
Sure, just to follow up on Amy's comments about the wood chip area just off of 2287, I think it might be an area that could lend itself to mitigation plantings if need be, so I agree with that. And I see that a variance is needed, but I guess I'm unclear as to for what work would need the variance.
I believe the variance, through the chair, I believe the variance would be to allow for that ramp to be expanded and paved.
Extended,
That's, starting in Brewster and then running into Harwich.
okay, so,
I don't foresee, technically, the work that we're doing at 2285 requires a variance because we're well within the 50, but we certainly are following your guidelines, no increase of square footage or anything like that, and so forth.
Yep. So just to recap, that present ramp is a pervious gravel presently?
Well, it's a stone dust.
Stone
It-
dust.
I don't think it's that much pervious.
No.
So the expansion of footprint is just extending more towards the water?
Yeah, and the reason for the expansion is because of the code requirements of an ADA ramp. We were trying to do it with gravel and trying to make it work, and it is just not working. They've had some issues with people in wheelchairs having difficulty getting access into the buildings.
Yep. And I'll ask Amy if she agrees that that would fit with our language on hardship for granting variances. It seems to me it would.
I think with mitigation, yes, I think it could. There is activity that's closer to the top of the bank than these proposed structures would be. They're in an existing area, there's two, because there's a ramp that goes to a building that's actually not in Harwich. There's one ramp there, and there's one ramp that connects to building 2287. So I think it could with some mitigation, and
Yeah.
I think you could consider that.
Yep.
Whereas we typically wouldn't.
Yep, so I think I agree, just looking for a little more detailed information on mitigation.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I agree with Amy's comment with regard to the mitigation and don't feel comfortable approving mitigation for a project that was approximately 9 years ago for a project that's being presented to us today. So I do think we need to see mitigation with regard to what's being presented in this project. That's the only comment I had.
Thank you. Alan? No comment. Sophia? Okay, I actually have I generally agree with Amy's point of view. I have a few questions. One is, the parking area just on the north side of 2285, that's labeled as proposed, but that's already a gravel area that's clearly been used for parking previously. What is exactly changing there? Are you removing the existing?
Yeah, we're basically removing the existing gravel driveway, regrading the area, and getting it, and then repositioning it. And that's why it is replacing the existing gravel parking that's there on the north side. It's not new, it's not vegetated, it's a hardened surface.
So, but are you including that 270 square feet in new hardscape?
No, because it's replacing what's already there.
Okay.
They have an existing conditions plan also, Mr. Chairman, where it does show it. The square footage is
They
slightly
show the
different.
same thing, okay. Okay, and I agree with Brad's comment that it should be possible to provide mitigation in that wood chipped area. There's a pretty vast area there, but I have a question. You show the ADA ramp coming up from the ADA parking area to the wood chipped area, and then it ends. But whoever is using that ramp still has to get into, presumably it's there, so people can get into the 2287 building. And how does that work? Because that isn't, it's
Well, the
still
eight-
downhill again from where the wood chip area is into the existing patio area and an entry into 2287. Or is it only just to get into the office that's on sort of the,
No, actually, excuse me, the office on the east side of 2287 is not handicapped accessible. It's a couple steps up into the building. The accessible entrances are on the side of 2287. One on the north side, and we have a ramp leading to it and a walkway leading to it. And then on the north side, we have another ADA ramp. I'm sorry, on the south side, we have another ADA ramp coming in from that that direction.
So I'm a little confused about what the point is of the ramp coming up from the ADA handicapped area.
It is to get a wheelchair to the top of the knoll.
So then a person in a wheelchair, where are they getting to from there? Do they go all the way down to
They can
the
get into,
south?
they can get into the building in Brewster.
Oh,
And, you know, and I do want to touch on this wood chip area. It's not an extra area, it's an area that's used by the program. So I'd like to talk about that mitigation aspect again. But yes, once they get up onto the knoll, it's the ramp, it's the steepness from getting to the parking area to the top of the knoll that's causing difficulty. And what we're trying to do is provide the wheelchair access to the top of the knoll. And at that point, they can go north to Brewster, they can go south and come in the backside of the building. The building of 2287 is used as a meeting area, is used as a community room, as well as the administrative offices now of the group. So that's the point of the two ramps. With regards to the mitigation, and I knew I was way out on a limb coming back to you 9 years after the campus was developed. But, you know, I think that, and I get what the commission says, and I don't know if this is gonna fall on deaf ears, so be it, but, you know, you're talking about an entity that's one of their sole missions is the protection and enhancement of Pleasant Bay as a resource. It's built right into their mission. I think that the group has demonstrated through their aquaculture program, through the kelp program that was just recently approved by this board, by the implementation of their dock and their sailing program, their enhanced moorings that they've taken, that they're moving forward with. You know, this is a group that is in existence not only to provide the sailing program, but also the care and custody of Pleasant Bay. And I would hope that counts for something. We can add some more shrubs and we can add some more vegetation, all at a cost to a nonprofit. The wood chipped area is used for, you know, grouping the kids up, grouping the students up and bringing them down to the dock. So it is an area that I don't know if they can simply give up. I would have to go back and talk to the group. But, you know, I think this is not a single developer, this is not a single homeowner. And I thought it was worth a discussion. And really, the reason you're asking for mitigation is because of an ADA requirement. It's one of the main focuses of it. So again, I hope the commission would reconsider their cause of additional mitigation, but I understand where the commission's coming from. I'm just kind of taking a final swing, I guess.
Amy.
My comment is, and regardless of how the commission goes about the mitigation, my comment about the wood chip area was just a suggestion. There could be, if the commission wants mitigation, there's certainly other places that it could go.
Right.
That wouldn't take away from proper access, emergency access, usage of that wood chipped area. That top of bank kind of behind the fence is really just, there's a few trees and then there's really just grasses, so creation of a thicker buffer there.
Yeah, I'm
potentially.
not trying to say that we can't do it if the
Yeah.
commission requires it. I'm just asking for maybe a reconsideration of it,
Yep,
that's
I
all.
understand.
Well, I have comments, but I'll hold them if others have comments.
If I may, I would just say, I think it's hard for us to parse out the benefits to the community that this nonprofit provides from us ruling on other projects. I think it's difficult for us to exempt mitigation requirements, so I would just kind of add to Amy's comment, maybe ask what they would like to do, if there's any mitigation or landscaping they'd prefer to do anyways. Maybe there's another location where it fits. I think it's hard to just say, okay, it's a nice group of folks, we're gonna say, we're gonna exempt that mitigation requirement. I think it's tough to do that.
I'd just like to expand a little bit on Brad's comments, because I agree with Brad. But, I mean, I think it's very dangerous for us to get into evaluation of applicant's value to the community in determining and enforcing our rules and regulations. If we start going down that slope, we have, earlier in the evening, we had the town of Harwich before us with regard to a piece of land owned by the town of Harwich. We would get into a very difficult situation, and I think we have to treat every applicant equally, even though we would recognize that there is a value to the community of something like Pleasant Bay community boating. But I don't think it changes our duty to treat every applicant equally.
So I would sum up what's been said here is I think you're hearing a request to go back and evaluate how you're using all that space and how you might think about that again and where you might find some area to use for mitigation. That's what I would hope to see here. And, there were explanations given for the wood chip area, why you need it, to keep it the way it is, for the path, which was an obvious thing to me, the semi-abandoned roadway that goes to the west of 2285. Apparently that's needed for fire safety. I guess if that's the case, if the town requires that to be there for fire safety for that building, then I guess that's not an option. It would otherwise have seemed like an obvious option to me. But we can't dictate to you how exactly to do this.
I'm not asking you to do that for me.
Well, I know you're not. I'm just saying, I think what you're hearing is a request to think about this and come back with proposals to address the commission's concerns.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Would it help the commission to know how we use that wood chipped area? Or what its basic use is?
Huntley, I think we can,
You're welcome.
Well, that's
to
fine.
explain-
I mean, I just,
You're welcome
if
to
there's some
explain it to
confusion on
us.
how we use it, I might be able to clarify that, but maybe, if it's not necessary, that's fine.
okay.
So, do we have any other discussion here? So, I guess what it sounds like is we're going to continue this hearing. You have a proposal for when you'd like to come back. I think the commission would prefer not the next meeting,
The next meeting
because
is
the next meeting
extremely large
is a
and
busy meeting.
complicated. The next
What are the
meeting-
dates? I don't know what the dates are.
So our dates, well, I would like to say that the first is really, in my opinion, not an option. We're
Okay,
booked.
February
So it'd
1st.
be February 15th.
Okay. Then I'd request a continuance to February 15th.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move that we continue the public hearing on the notice of intent for Pleasant Bay Community Boating 2285 and 2287, Route 28, head of the Bay Road, map 119, parcels N7-3 and N8-0. To our meeting of February 14th,
15th.
15th, 2023.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, so 5 in favor, 1 abstain. Thank you. Okay, so next item is a request for a certificate of compliance for 57 Gorham Road, map 23, parcel C1-B, SE 32-3. 352, construction of dwelling.
So, this order was from 1984, and it expired. The construction of the dwelling at 57 Gorham was completed. The lot was subdivided in the early 90s, and the order was incorrectly kept on record for 63 rather than 57. The owners of 63 are now selling, and we need this to close out. So, the dwelling was constructed as approved, other orders have been issued from the property. So there's a new order, 32-2463, that supersedes this one. So we would recommend an approval for this old certificate of compliance to get everything cleared up.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions or issues from
No.
commissioners? Hearing none.
I'll make a motion that we approve the certificate of compliance for 57 Gorham Road, map 23, parcel C1-B, SE 32-352.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 23, a request for a certificate of compliance for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2-2, SE 32-2070 for balcony supports and southern beach access stairs. Amy?
Yep, so in 2011, the commission issued a permit that allowed the construction of balconies and decks on the south side of the Captain's House condominium building. They would like a partial certificate of compliance to release Unit 2 from this. I believe it's in the process of being sold. The work was never done on Unit 2. We only recommend a partial because we're not ready to release the entire property from this, just Unit 2. So we would recommend a partial cert of compliance for Unit 2, and any further activity would require a new notice of intent.
Okay, questions or comments?
No.
Hearing none.
Okay. I'll move that we approve the certificate of compliance for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2-2, SE 32-2070.
Second?
Second?
So this is, comment, this is a partial certificate of compliance for
Correct.
work never done on Unit 2, so that should be part of the motion.
Okay. I'll agree with that amendment to the motion.
Okay?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed? Okay. Next on the agenda is discussion and possible vote for Witchmere Habitat Conservation Plan. So, do we have an advocate?
Good evening, Jonathan Schuster with SWCA.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. I can share my screen, if that's all right. Sorry, having a little technical difficulty here. I'll just share the entire screen and, all right, we're in business. Yes, thanks for hearing this. We left off, it was the last December meeting. We weren't on the agenda for earlier this month, so we're picking up here. Essentially, Your commission had approved a letter being issued for a beach management plan, which Natural Heritage was thankful to receive. There's a second component to what we're proposing here, this habitat conservation plan that will allow the beach club to use more of their beach in a compliant way, implementing certain measures to reduce the footprint of symbolic fencing. And there are certain dates and methods involved. We're working closely with Massachusetts Audubon's Coastal Waterbird program, where I actually used to work. And we're working with, obviously, the Witchmere Beach Club and their operations team to make sure that this gets implemented in the most useful way for the beach club while being compliant with all the requirements of the Habitat Conservation Plan. There's annual reporting, which is required, which is relayed to the state. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is also involved, and basically the HCP process involves the state on behalf of Witchmere securing a permit to impact piping plover, which are federally listed. There also are least tern, which are state listed, that nest at the site, or at least have in the past couple of years, though the colony is much more ephemeral, and some years it might not show up. The figure you're seeing is part of the packet that was relayed to you. It's showing the broader, this line with the X's in it is sort of the maximal footprint of fencing, which would be erected by April 1st. We can then get a 20% reduction with certain disruption activities, including beach raking. The filing mentions daily beach raking. It'll likely be closer to 5 days a week. And some other methods as well, such as staked streamers to deter nesting in this western area, but it might vary year to year. So basically the HCP allows for flexibility on the part of Witchmere to work with Audubon to keep certain portions of the beach open for recreational use. The HCP is a process that's been used across the state on many different locations. It allows the state to offer flexibility for those beachfront owners and towns and managers that enter into this system, which again requires vigorous reporting and other requirements. I'll just note that basically come 4th of July, the fencing may be further reduced. Actually, May 24th is that cutoff date. So this sort of tan line you're seeing here is sort of what the fencing might look like as an example in early May, let's say. And it can be reduced further from there with permissions to reduce the buffers to nests. One document that I neglected to email over prior, which was recently prepared by Audubon, is this document here. It's basic, and I just emailed this a couple hours ago to Amy, but this is Audubon's document outlining how they would implement the HCP, what their qualifications for their staff are, how often they'll be at the site, as well as some of the reporting requirements. So if I were to scroll down, you'll see they provide, pardon the whirring pages, but basically there's an online platform where they can report, when they're implementing the HCP. On this date, we reduced the buffer to this nest, and they're documenting every pair that is included under this HCP. One thing I'll mention is not every piping plover pair at the site would be affected by the HCP. An example could be pairs nesting in the eastern area here. We're currently working under the assumption that up to 3 piping plover pairs at the site could be affected by the HCP. And there's some ongoing discussions. There have been a couple minor edits that we're working on in a final draft to the state. Again, this has been formally submitted, but we're working on cementing final language, essentially some minor details in the text. I'm happy to go into those if the commission's interested. But again, what we're seeking here from your commission is a letter of support, basically that in light of wetland protection regulations and your bylaw, specifically beach raking as an example, this is compliant, and that basically the state is weighing in on all matters related to rare species. So this would be a similar letter issued as you had issued for the beach management plan. And that I'll leave some time. I'm sure you may have questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Thank you. In reviewing, having much more time to review the document was really good. I did reach out to Mass Audubon just to ensure that, you know, they were aware and in, you know, how they felt about this, and they were in favor of that. I heard today from Lyra. I sent that to you via email. They were in favor of this. They feel it will be a way to better kind of enforce and police the activities going on the site and account for things. I have reservations about it under the Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaw, though. The activities that you're proposing, yes, you do beach raking, and yes, you have a permit to do beach raking. I'm not disputing that. Some of the methods of deterrence that you are saying that you may employ, you don't have a permit for. That's things such as any type of matting that you would deploy to prevent birds from using an area. Flagging. This is a coastal beach, so you haven't demonstrated to me how this habitat conservation plan meets the performance standards of being on a coastal beach. I would suggest to the commission that any change to your current practices, not only if we consider it here, but if you're going to be potentially deploying mats, if you're going to be doing anything different to the beach than you're doing now by just raking, would require a new notice of intent application to the commission. I also, 310 CMR 10.37, I know you've been working with Natural Heritage and Audubon, but that's the section of the act that deals with estimated habitat for rare wildlife, which is an area that's under our jurisdiction as well as DEP's. And it says that alteration of a mapped habitat shall not result in short or long-term effects on the habitat of a local population of species. And that would be plovers and least terns here. I know that, so you have conversations with the state to allow that take with Natural Heritage, but 310 CMR 10.37 is also under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission locally. And that would, I think, in way require a variance from us if you were going to alter, even in a short term, effects on that mapped habitat. So at this time, I cannot recommend the commission endorse the habitat conservation plan. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Amy. So comments from commissioners. Alan?
No comment.
Jim?
I agree with Amy's comments.
No comments.
Stan?
I agree with Amy's comments.
Mark?
I do as well.
Sophia?
No comments.
Well, I can only say I agree with Amy as well. I wouldn't agree with moving forward with this right now. Further comments from anyone? Jonathan?
Sure. So that's certainly helpful to know that that's the view, the general view of your commission, that, you know, it seems to be that this would require permitting under, say, an NOI.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we did file, so, I mean, typically when something is in, you know, estimated, when a project is in estimated or priority habitat, you know, if it does rise to the level of an NOI, there'd be potentially the filing of a streamlined, you know, MISA checklist accompanying that. I'll say that this filing is dually a MISA checklist and a CMP, so a conservation management permit with the state. So in terms of, so you're correct, Amy, that in terms of the state's jurisdiction here, we have been checking those boxes. Were we to file a notice of intent with your commission, specifically to address, these rare species concerns, we would be laying out, similar arguments about, the seasonality of these measures, the permissions from both state and federal government to carry out certain deterrence measures, and the benefits that we see to implementation as well. So with that being the case, we can, try to move ahead and get that together. In my opinion, these seasonal measures, don't necessarily rise to that level, but I respect the will of the commission to, see through a permit if that's necessary. Just generally speaking, shorebird fencing installed annually, or even something like, winter sand fence can vary year to year in how it is deployed. But I understand that certain activities here could rise, in your opinion, to the level of a novel activity. Certain deterrence measures, the beach raking, for instance, if it's my understanding that this is already, accounted for and under the umbrella of a beach permit, this is sort of a general question to the commission. Let's say we get all our approvals at the state and federal level to implement this, would there be a problem, generally speaking, with implementing it this season with those measures that are already under the umbrella? So not implementing matting or other things that are included in it that you're saying you want purview over under a permit filing. What's your general take on that approach? Although we could certainly, file this quickly, and it's not spring yet. There's still, the rest of winter to see this through.
My recommendation is it's a little bit of the cart before the horse. You're asking the commission for what they would approve prior to them seeing a formal filing for it. So if the commission, say for instance, they were to approve the HCP tonight, and then that has measures in it that we should see under the filing, like the deterrent measures and things like that, I think you're asking a question that I would feel uncomfortable recommending the commission answer at this point, to kind of give a blessing towards a project that we haven't seen. And you're also, you're not just filing for under the estimated habitat for wildlife habitat, you have to demonstrate performance standards for coastal beach, flood zone, those things too. You'll have to elaborate in your narrative. I'm not necessarily against this. I just think the process needs to be flipped a little bit. And we need more clarification on how your strategies are not only not going to have a severe impact, a substantial negative impact on state listed species, but on the resource areas in which they're happening on. Right now, the Witchmere only has a permit to rake the beach. And that's it. It's an old permit, it's an old condition. It has a certificate of compliance for ongoing conditions, so it's not like we can open that back up. The fencing, that's required usually by NHESP, as well as, Audubon for the protection of plovers. So we do the same thing on our beaches, but the other activities that you're talking about aren't covered.
So, do any commissioners have further comments? Okay, so at this point, it doesn't seem like the commission is in favor of writing a letter. Is there any action required here, or we just move on?
There is no action required.
Thank you for your presentation. I think the sentiment of the commission is pretty clear, should be clear to you, so I don't think there is more to be said here at
And you can reach out to me, Jonathan, if you want to talk about it further, so.
Okay, thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night. All right, so we have updates on ongoing land management tasks.
We don't really.
So, these are all,
Well,
To
one
be
thing I have a question, actually.
yeah,
We're quickly coming up on the deadline for town meeting, submission of articles.
what?
Really crept up on me.
What is town manager's or the selectmen's deadline date for?
Sometime between February 1st, which is our next meeting, and February 15th was our meeting afterwards. I think it's towards the middle of February. The commission's changed a little bit. I don't know if we have time to do this or not, but at the town meeting, last town meeting, the town approved changes to the water dependent structures bylaw in regards to height above marsh and spacing and things like that. There was a lot of confusion at town meeting in regards to our request for changes to the wetlands protection bylaw, the biggest change of which was the decreasing in regulatable wetland size. I am not sure if we want to try to tackle that and see if we want to bring that back now, or if we want to have further discussion about it, potentially look at something for next year.
But there were other changes that didn't involve the controversial isolated wetland size, which,
I just bring that up because that was the big one.
right, but that was the thing that hung it up, right? I mean, are there other worthwhile changes there?
There was a lot of language changes that hung it up.
I think there's a lot of confusion over it. So I just don't know if there's time for this commission we would have to evaluate it and vote again.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know if I have time, and I'm sorry.
yeah. No, I'd be ready to vote yay, let's go forward again, but I don't know. I think we're starting over as a commission, we would have to vet it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I think we'd have to post it,
We'd have to have another public hearing about it,
Yeah.
which would have to be next meeting.
right, which
we're
is,
not doing that, I
which is
guess.
packed.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Does anyone else have any interest in pursuing this?
I don't.
We can certainly bring it back, it's just, I think it's worthwhile bringing it back, we've just been so busy.
I think if the public had a better chance to understand what it was about, we might have had more support.
Yeah. And it needs to be better vetted by council as well.
Amy, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment. Maybe the way we should proceed is to, start the process of taking a look at what we want to bring back.
We should, yes.
And do it, start the process relatively soon. I mean, I know you said the next meeting is a disaster, but, as
I
soon
didn't say
as.
that.
Well, as soon as possible. Anyway, with the idea that if by any chance this year there is a fall town meeting, we might be able to
Yeah.
get it to a fall town meeting.
Yep, true.
And if there isn't a fall town meeting, then we'd be a little bit ahead of the
Be
curve
prepared.
to get it to next year's
Yes.
town meeting.
Yep.
So that would be my recommendation.
I think that's a reasonable notion for how to proceed. So maybe put a further discussion on February 15th.
Yep.
And as far as the Herring River study or Thompson's Field, we don't
Thompson's Fields,
updates, or are there?
well, the update Mark and I gave you last time was that we had met with the animal control officer and discussed some of the management issues there. turns out that she had put in a change for the animal control bylaw, mostly dealing with kind of definitions of what is under voice control, not changing it from a soft leash law to a hard, but just better defining what control means so that she can better enforcement as a first step. So I have to touch base with her to see where that was at, because she submitted that back, she said in like October, to administration to be vetted for this town meeting. So I will make a point to touch base with her ASAP on that one, because I haven't heard from her. And the Herring River study, remind me, were you ready to have me send it out to our group of experts over at the county, the RFP that I proposed we put together?
Well, my feeling was to hear from the commissioners and, first.
Okay.
And so I think that's where we are, and maybe we need a deadline to receive comments. If, I'm not sure what you're thinking on that, John. If, it would be nice, you provided it last meeting, so it's been one meeting, maybe by February 15th.
February 15th. And where is that draft posted?
It's in Dropbox, but we'll make a new folder for February 15th and I'll put it in there. It should be, it was probably in last meeting's folder, John.
All right.
If not, it was emailed. I can't remember.
I was looking for it in my email and I
But we
couldn't
will
find it.
put
so
it, we'll make a February 15th, well, obviously, we'll be making February 1st soon, but
There it
February
is.
15th folder and put it in there.
It's in the January 4th folder.
We'll move it over anyways.
Okay, well, let's, we would have had time tonight, but
Yeah,
let's put it on for January 15th.
February.
Any comments on it, or any questions?
Yeah, are there any comments now on it?
I don't.
No, yeah, I reviewed it and I have no additional comment.
So I don't know if you're familiar, if you had a chance to look through that. We're embarking on a very interesting study of the health of the Herring River, predominantly how it has to deal with how docks and piers and hard structures are having, what type of impact are they having to salt marsh, coastal bank, land containing shellfish, things like that. So it is in the last meeting's folder on Dropbox, the request for proposals. Essentially, this commission had brought forth to town meeting a moratorium on any new docks in the Herring River at last town meeting, but it was not supported. So one of the main points was, from the public, was, well, prove to us that there's impacts. And so we have to put together a request for proposals. We're getting, Brad, myself, and our previous chairman, we're working on it, as well as we had some input from people at the county on what should go into this and what we would be looking for. Kind of just an open study, pros, negatives or positives, because some things might be a positive impact, you don't know. We're in the process of doing that. It's gonna be a big study. Okay. And long-term, hopefully looking at health going upstream the river too.
Alan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question. I think I asked it before, a couple of meetings ago about this, but how do you do a study on private property along the river? How does the town do that? Do we have to get permission from all the dock owners to go and inspect and inspect their property? How well is that gonna go over?
If they're on Commonwealth tidelands, then no, but obviously we'd want to alert those people and try to get permission. But we're not saying that they're gonna climb on their docks or go above mean high water, but in the Commonwealth tidelands, they can navigate.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this. This is not
Yeah.
my
No,
everyday,
I'm
this is
I'm
not my everyday
Yeah,
job, but I'm just asking as a landowner, I would wanna know, there's a study going on, and it's in front of my property, and it's gonna tell the town what's good or bad, and my equipment or my material may be contributing to what's good or bad, and how do we go about that? So, I don't know, I just see a lot of pushback, possibly, Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that way, but,
I understand where you're coming
as a
from.
property owner, I'd be like, okay, how you doing this? And what,
You
what's the
can't-
baseline? How do we take a study on a baseline where the cat's already out of the garage? The docks have been there for years. What are we comparing it to?
If I can tackle that, I would say to your first point, again, it's Commonwealth Tidelands, so the town officials can go there, but it'd be really wise to talk to everybody up front. And if we're gonna do specific controlled experiments next to your dock, ask for permission.
So we, and not to interrupt, but we'd have to send out a notification like an RDA, like we do, we require everybody else to do, as far as an abutters notice
Yep.
to each
Cover
property.
letter.
Okay, all right,
Got it.
I'm just one for
Yeah.
clarification, that's all.
But that's not a legal requirement, right? I mean, this is testing. Testings do not, as I understand it, Amy, please correct me if I'm wrong, being in the river, taking, I mean, I don't know if this study would go to the extent of actually taking sediment samples and things of that sort. But
So
if
it's,
that's what you're doing,
yeah,
if it's for the purposes of evaluating regulation, is any kind of regulatory permit required?
so under the Wetlands Protection Act, there's a section that exempts what they call exploratory borings, which is basically testing for the purpose of evaluation. So, but that, if we were doing it in Commonwealth Tidelands, that's an exemption. But if we were to be doing it on somebody's private property above that, then we should get permission. I do think regardless of whether we should or have to or whatnot, that we do notify all the people who live south of the 28 bridge on the river. That's just part of, it's just part of the project, it's part of the cost of the project.
So,
But we, legally, if we're in Commonwealth Tidelands and we're just testing, no.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding from the various agencies that I have both worked for and been on boards of is that Amy's correct, there's really no legal requirement. However, there is both a best practices approach and a political approach to make sure that everybody that is impacted or that, you know, will sort of see what's going on, knows what's going on, and has the chance to comment on it. I mean, we're going to have public meetings, you know, as this study proceeds. So I think there, while it's my understanding there's no legal requirement, there certainly is a best practices and political requirement.
And a lot of these, I mean, say the study finds something, that something's contributing to it. It's something we permitted a long time ago. It's not like we're gonna say, you have to go change it. It's to have a better understanding of what may or may not impact the river.
Yeah, which would help us in future permitting.
Yeah.
And to follow up on Alan's second comment, you can study things in a way that'll tell you what the structure might be doing for impacts by having controlled experiments, you know, a place with no structure, a place with structure, and just learn about what might be happening to the salt marsh, for example. So I think that's what we're hoping to do, but it doesn't mean you can go back to the structure owner and say, hey, you gotta change that.
Well, just throwing out these questions
Yeah.
because I'm not clear on it, I'm just trying to understand it, so thank you.
Yeah, and I know you have an interest in the upstream piece, as does Mark. So I'd encourage you guys to look at this study and just think about, you know, we talked last meeting about having a phase one, phase two. I think we should at least get language in this proposal that addresses the upstream areas.
Speaking of that area, I was walking Sandpond Woodlands the other day, and one of the social trails off that goes down the embankment towards the river, and this time of year it's really easy to get to that restriction that's in there. So as part of, if we're ever talking about studying the upper reaches or clearing some of that from some of the aggressive vegetation that's there, something to think about is removal of that impediment that's there. There's a choke point. You can tell on both sides the river wants to be about 5 feet wider on either side, and there's an old culvert dike flume there that's severely restricting flow at times. So as we think about that, I just remembered that the other day when I was over there.
With the rain, it
It's in
has
bad
helped.
shape.
Yeah, yeah. With the rain, though, it has helped cut some of that weed that was
Yeah.
north of Great Western Road there this summer, that it's kind of gone, like you said earlier, with a good flow, it has kind of moved through, so.
While I'm not opposed to taking a look at the upper part of the river, and I think that's clearly something that we should think about doing, I am a little bit concerned about whether or not we have enough resources to properly study the area that was our initial concern, and don't want to sort of add to the potential scope of work to the point where the study, when we go out to bid, the study becomes too expensive, or we dilute the sort of the specifics and the focus of the study as to what we really initially wanted to find out.
I agree.
Would it be sensible to do 2 RFPs, one upper, one lower?
And I think that's correct, Mark. I think let's get out with this for the lower and see where that comes in, see whether our resources cover that, and if we have additional resources, then let's put together one for the upper part of the river.
If I can offer something in the middle, I think it's a good use of resources to put it on one RFP as an option. Having the original concept is what we're seeking to fund. By the way, while you're reviewing this, can you put in a bid, a cost estimate for this? And can we do that if you don't have the costs isolated?
I don't know, and
I mean,
what you're asking is essential. I mean, right now, we're pretty close, I think, to be able to issue an RFP for the lower section. We'd have to kind of rethink, because the whole issues on the north of kind of the Bell's Neck, completely different.
It's quite different.
So I just wouldn't want to delay it.
If I could just add, I do a fair amount of contract work, and what I do is I have it as an option where you can choose not to move forward on the optional item. You can just
I just
ask.
don't know what we would put in the RFP for that piece at this point.
It would be, well, we should talk about that. I hate to lose the momentum and the public exposure on the whole river,
Yeah,
which this process will give us.
yeah.
So, Go ahead,
Just to sort of continue on Brad's comment, my experience, I have worked for public agencies for like 43 years and been involved in the bid process. While what Brad is saying can be done, it does complicate the bid process and usually slows down the process of actually awarding a contract.
It can.
Now, my experience is that it generally does.
But for me, something like this, it's a line item. And make it clear that you don't have to bid on this, you only have to respond to it. But it's there to get information for the next phase. And so I think maybe we should just, on the 15th, be prepared to have comments on the specific thing and just pound it out that night. People can think about it.
Yeah.
I just know there'll be some exposure to the phase 1, there'll be some public discussion. It'd be nice to raise the awareness on what's going on in the upper river in that process.
Mark, would it be wise to involve natural resources in the discussion on the upper river as well?
Yep.
Absolutely. And I had a discussion today with one of the Board of Selectmen members, and they're very interested in seeing some work go ahead soon on the upper river. And I said, well, let's get together with the Natural Resource Department and just talk about what that might be. That focuses on stream work for fish passage. So there's a fair amount of interest. So I'd like to, and if it's separate, then it's separate, but I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to talk about it.
Okay.
I just want to comment that there is a separate initiative going on at the Cape Cod Commission level on freshwater resources on Cape Cod. And a lot of the focus is on eutrophication of ponds on Cape Cod. And they're spinning up an initiative to create a database which is similar to the one for saltwater estuaries on water quality. I would strongly encourage you, Mark, and Alan to get in touch with people involved in that, at least air your concerns with them. Because concerns about it's really a freshwater system above the dam, right? It's not a saltwater estuary. And air your concerns, make them aware of your concerns, and talk to them about funding. They do have funding. They may or may not have funding available for things like this, but it should be at least on their radar, because it affects water quality for everybody, the flow rates and that sort of thing. I can give you the name of someone I know there or I can give you a couple names.
Do you have like an email notice of that activity?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Probably the best thing for me
Send
to
it to
do
me.
is to give it to you and you can
And I
send
will
it to the
disseminate it.
whole
Yeah.
commission. They've had several, like, online meetings, which I've attended. Most of the people are like town officials of one sort or another over the Cape.
Is this the redoing of the PALS program?
They never articulate the goal in that manner, but basically that's what it is. It's like starting from scratch, because they don't, apparently well, I don't know, I don't want to say anything about exactly how that works, but they're making a public database, like the saltwater estuary database you can access through the Cape Cod Commission website. There is no such facility for freshwater data. The PALS data are not available in that manner.
Right.
And they're trying to like extend what they already have for saltwater estuaries to freshwater resources on the Cape. And I will send a notice.
Send it to me. Oh, yeah, I'll send it out.
I'll find the latest thing I have from them and
Cool.
send it to you.
Sounds like a plan.
Jim?
Okay, I'd just like to make one sort of more practical comment as opposed to substantive with regard to this issue. We've been talking about this issue since town meeting last May. I would hate to do anything at this point to delay getting out the RFP that we have had developed and getting that study started on the lower, the lower part of the river. That doesn't preclude us from doing anything after we get that out and get that going on the upper part of the river. And again, between the timing and the fact that we don't exactly know what the costs are going to be until we get a bid, and we don't know whether we'll have, what resources we'll have to devote to the upper part of the river, I would like to see us just proceed with what we have now, and then certainly not drop the discussion of the upper river, but then start discussing what we do with regard to the upper part of the river.
Do we want, with that in mind, you're fairly adamant about this point. With that in mind, would you want to have like a subcommittee start to look into the upper river?
Seems like a good idea. I mean, that you,
I think it's a good idea, John, but can we get this out?
Oh, we will.
And get this bid first
Believe me,
before we do
I
it?
feel even stronger than you do because I took a beating at that public meeting. and-
Yeah, no, I watched you take that beating, Brad, and that's why I think it's necessary that we get this out.
I agree with you.
To show some
I-
progress.
I'm all for, I think on the 15th, we're gonna get there, and then maybe we can talk about, moving forward.
yeah, let's,
The upper river has work to be done soon. It's really kind of manual labor, and so it might not need as much study. Ideally, you'd love to study the entire watershed at once, but that could be a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, I'm with you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Marcus.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
To your point, Brad, that was one of the reasons I was concerned about involving natural resources, to gain his perspective and
Yep,
gain some direction there, because that is sort of his ballgame.
yeah.
In addition to this, while we're talking about the river, the herring fishery this year obviously is still closed, as I understand.
Yes, I might as well give a quick update. The Board of Selectmen voted on the 9th to not have an opening.
Right.
I went before them on the 3rd and just gave them an update from the state perspective that Heinz Prof came in on the 9th, and his recommendation was not to have a harvest.
Okay.
And they accepted that and they voted not to. So there's really, the urgency to do things with the gate and all have been reduced. So that's where we are for this year.
Well, considering the fact that the harvest is closed, does that push the issue to have a gate up there so it's more of a controlled area?
I don't mind having it to have the public learn about a gate and working it all out, so I still support it.
Yeah, we have issues regardless of herring or not. We have nighttime issues in there so I don't think we should stop pursuing the gate.
Yep, I agree. The gate was
Nighttime
proposed well
gate.
before the harvest plan was even discussed, because of poaching and a number of things, so I think it's fine if we continue, but to me, the pressure's off. I think if you have a harvest, you have to have a nighttime gate.
Yeah.
Have to. So I think we should continue to discuss it and see what happens.
Mr. Chairman, to ask Brad, is Brewster gonna harvest? Or-
No, they haven't requested, no one in the Cape has requested a harvest.
Is it because the numbers this year were so low?
And I think you need to now have a record of your spawning run counts
Right.
to support a harvest plan. And I think towns need to have a comfort that they have enough fish to harvest.
Yeah.
And so my agency has received requests from Pembroke, Wareham, Harwich, Middleborough, Lakeville. That's it. So Harwich is the first in the Cape. And Middleborough, Lakeville is approved, as is Harwich. So there's 2 approved plans. And I certainly hope we find a way to give the public access to fish.
Yeah.
And my recommendation was to consider a very short-term opening, just to learn how to do it. But they have paused for this year, so that won't be happening.
So is there an electronic fish counting operation over?
We haven't had herring run in a long time.
Herring run in Brewster?
Yes. Yep.
And is that something you do with the state, or?
We designed, fabricated, and installed that herring counter as well.
I see.
My shop in New Bedford makes them, and so we help Brewster maintain it. So they have electronic count. Their run is lagging behind Harwich's, so I would not advocate they seek an opening right
I
now.
see.
But maybe in a couple of years, they might get there. So I think that there's probably no more than 10 runs in the state that are really ready if they wanted to have a harvest. So we're coming back slowly from where we were.
Quick reminder before we get to minutes, we have a work session next Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock, in the small hearing room, to talk Bell's Neck
Yep.
and management. So come with your thoughts.
And edits.
And edits, yes.
And the current document is in,
It's in one of the Dropbox folders, but we'll make another folder for that meeting. We'll
okay,
make it accessible to you tomorrow,
okay.
okay?
Another quick announcement, the MCAA conference in Worcester in March. I think you all should go. It's a
Is
good
it
take. It's gonna be,
First weekend?
Mass Conservation,
Yeah,
Association of Conservation Commissions.
yeah,
It's usually the first Saturday of March. I'd have to look and see what we have for funding in the line items to send you if you wanted to go. Yeah, we belong to the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. And there's fundamentals, there's a whole fundamentals unit of 8 units for conservation commissioners. Then there's a whole bunch of other seminars. It's a great time to see new science that's happening, new products that are being used on the market for use in sensitive areas, things like that. It's a good networking opportunity, learning opportunity. So I haven't gotten any messages about that, so I'll check, but,
I haven't seen the agenda. I know
well,
that,
they don't usually do an agenda till pretty close, but they usually do a save the date around Christmas.
I thought I saw the save the date.
The
There
last
is-
one I saw was for their fall conference, which is a very truncated, smaller conference.
Yeah.
But I can look at that up, MACC.
There's a workshop on geographic information systems for sea-run fish that's being taught by yours truly, so if you really want to,
Oh, that's why.
you want to be bored, sign up early.
Plug.
It's a good day. If we have a few people who wanna go, we can carpool.
And it's in Worcester, right?
It is at, Holy Cross.
It is a long trip,
It's a long trip.
but it's worth it. It's a great forum.
They give you good lunch.
All right,
Alright, that's all.
anything else on this general topic? Hearing none, let's move on to minutes for August 3rd and August 17th.
I got your grammatical changes, John.
And the thing, there was one question about a vote. Did you see that?
Didn't, sorry, I kinda skimmed, I missed that part.
Unfortunately, let's see, wait a minute, I'll find it here.
I've got a few comments. I didn't get through anything but the third, because I had a few comments. I wonder if I should send them to Amy instead
Well,
of.
if they're substantive, we should talk about them.
Yeah, you're
If-
right. Okay.
So, I have them in front of me, so if you wanna
Okay.
tell me what you think.
August 3rd, let's see, where is it?
So, Amy, on page 3 for August 3rd, on the discussion of Colebrook, there was a vote on that, and Mr. Hall and Mr. Coulson abstained, which you state at the end of that, but then,
Oh, 501,
yeah, right.
should be 502.
I think we recused ourselves. I didn't even abstain, I think I recused, we were in the other room.
Well, should it say,
We weren't even present.
is recused a word that is relevant in this context, or is abstain the right?
No, because if they weren't in the room and then they didn't vote at all.
It was
So they didn't
recused.
abstain from the vote.
So the vote would be 5-0,
Yeah, right.
and Mr. Hall and Mr. Coulson had recused themselves from the hearing.
Yeah, that would be the right way to put it, Amy.
Okay,
Thanks, John.
that's good.
Yep, that was one of my 4 comments, so that's off my list. You ready for the next one, Amy?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so page 2, second paragraph, right in the middle, there's a sentence that says, so the plan was to remove on of the first 4 bedrooms. That on should be a 1, I believe.
Yep. Got it.
And then, let's see, under the same discussion on the HCT property, let's see where it is.
Wait, on that page 2, we're going back to the other page?
Page 4.
Page
I
4.
got 2 comments on page 4.
All right,
So we did on the second paragraph, second sentence, second paragraph, it says, Mr. Chase stated that he was ready to vote on the project, but he wanted to have further discussion on the conditions. We did go on at quite a long time over whether the proposed changes to channels and pond inlets and outlets would impact the passenger sea-run fish. So I felt like that should be clarified somewhere in that paragraph, and so what I was just saying, suggesting was, at the end of that, would want to have further discussion on the conditions, and then say related to making sure the created channel, riffle, and pond outlets function to support sea-run fish passage. I can send that to you if you want, but I thought we spent a fair amount of time on that, so
making sure the created riffle
created channel, riffle, and pond outlets, function to support sea run fish passage.
I got it. Okay,
And the last comment is right down at the motion at the end of that page. It's the same idea. It says, we ask for a condition for 3 years of monitoring for stream channels and riffles. I would just tuck pond outlets into that, stream channels, pond outlets, and riffles, because that's, again, we talked about making sure those junctions didn't end up impeding fish.
getting
Because of the way
silted in or whatever.
yeah, the way they would construct it, so that's it.
Got it.
And then I didn't get to the next one, I'm not sure if there was any,
Well, might as well take, it's early for us, so take a minute.
all right, the 17th?
Well, is there, so let's do the 3rd. Is there any other comments on the 3rd, August 3rd?
Doesn't look like there are any other comments. I'll move we approve the minutes from August 3rd, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
Is 14 Mill Point Road coming back on the 1st?
Supposedly,
Yeah.
they went to Waterways, I'd say that they went to Waterways last night, and the Shellfish Castles got unanimously not supported.
Interesting. It could be something a boat could hit, so, yeah.
I supposed to chat with the applicant tomorrow about how they plan to proceed.
The minutes are a good primer on that project. It's Melissa preparing these minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Does a great job.
Yeah. We're almost caught up, too. All the old ones we're done with. And yes, August is caught up. It's crazy.
She watches the.
Yeah. Sometimes, she told me today, sometimes she tunes in from home here, but she does not.
So, I have a question about those August 17th minutes, which is the last sentence prior to adjournment, says that Mr. Chase mentioned, that he would send a variety of historic articles and studies on the topic to Ms. Yuzowski. Did that happen? And if so, can they be shared with the rest of us? I
What
don't-
topic was that? Hold on, let me look.
It's at
It
the
was a while
very end
ago.
of the minutes,
Where's
the
your
last
photo?
sentence prior to adjournment.
Mrs. Oskey responded to the study that the commission had voted was focused on impacts to water-dependent structures, so it would only cover a portion of the Herring River from Nantucket Center at 28 I don't recall if you sent me
I,
those,
I
Brad?
did, it was a stack of, for my file at work.
Oh, was it paper files?
Yeah,
Okay,
and,
then we have them.
yep, and I think you,
I do remember you bringing them in.
yep,
And I was like, I'll scan them, and that didn't happen, so I will do that.
there was actually a Herring River watershed study done like in the 70s.
Yep,
Oh,
yes, I remember.
We should be reviewing those.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I will get them to you.
I thought you made it available at one point, Amy, but I forget. If you,
I don't remember.
yeah,
I
you might have provided a file of scanned documents.
scanned them, or I just can't remember that far back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't remember if you've returned them to me, actually. I don't know.
We will look for them tomorrow, I made a
Okay.
note.
well, there's a folder in here on Dropbox labeled Herring River Historical Studies.
There you go.
And
Might be it.
and has
And I'll
5
make
items
sure I got them
in
back
it.
to you.
4 PDFs and 1 unidentified file type. Oh, no, oh, the period is missing before PDF, so I don't know what that is.
I'll double check, but that's probably it, and I'll just get them back to you, Brad.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, there's a lot there to consider for, not so much the present study for the water dependent structure impacts, but I think for the next phase, there's a lot there to look at. I guess I have no comments. I'm not doing a very good job right now of editing.
I reviewed them, I only had, aside from that question, I think I had one other correction, but you have that, Amy, so anyone else have any comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of August 17th, 2022.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Okay, do we have any other business? Okay,
One quick tidbit,
yes, sir.
in a conversation, turning the clock back here a while now, we've discussed contacting the state about the drainage that's being dumped into Witchmere Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any conversation about that taking place?
I reached out to
did
Mass
too.
DOT and they did not respond to me.
I had a conversation, I got a hold of MassDOT, finally got
Yep.
put into touch with the right people, sent them, had a productive, I thought, conversation, this was a couple months ago. Sent them all the documents that I had about the drainage, they were gonna look into it, and I haven't heard back, so.
Well, at least
Um,
it's,
It would be an appropriate time, since they're considering the sidewalk extension
Yeah.
from Harwich Port to the harbor, if they're gonna be ripping things up anyways in that area, to look at that. It was not known evidently to them. And, yeah, so I'll put that on our radar, MassDOT,
Good.
Witchmere.
I also reached out to the Natural Resources Conservation Service, who have the Cape Cod Restoration Plan. They're looking to improve salt marsh, shellfish habitat. And I think they kind of put it on like a short list of.
Don
potential-
Liptak called me,
Yeah, so I think it's on their radar.
yeah.
that's positive.
I think so. They're looking for things to do. I don't know if they'll take on property that, they want it to be town property. They'd like it to be town property, I think. But that's a good group to look to, for restoration projects. And I am meeting with DOT on the 31st to look at coast-wide restoration opportunities. There's no reason I
I'll
can't.
let you know who I talked to. I don't remember off the top of my head. There was a couple of them. But I'll let you know who I talked to.
I'm talking to the environmental group in Boston, Tim Dexter. Okay.
No.
All right, we'll trade ideas.
Okay.
So, Amy, just one minor point on that folder, Herring River Historic Studies, one of the files is improperly named. There has to be a period before PDF in the file name, or people will have trouble opening it. I don't think I can fix it, because I don't
You're not,
think-
yeah, that's fine. Hearing,
So, do we have a motion?
I would
I'll
move to
move
adjourn.
that we adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. None opposed?
This is your
Got
third
some
meeting
things for you
before
folks
9
to
o'clock,
sign right
John.
here.
It's the last one, I think.
It may very well be, but you have a
No, you
great
cannot
record
vote,
so
but you
far.
can ask questions, make comments.
Okay.
Yep.
That's why we wanted you as chairman, John.
Not until we can get town meeting approval
All
for
right.
alternates to vote, especially like if we ever have a quorum issue where we don't have enough people. We're gonna vote on things.
Gotcha.